Say that you know better than the church is to say that you know better than God. But most importantly, at the time anyway, was that they could demolish atheist arguments. And interestingly, the scandals were going on at the time, and some people said, well, you've heard about all these things that are happening in the Catholic Church. In an odd way, it made the case more compelling.
Welcome back, all you apostate sinners. This is Project Nihilist. Before we get into this video about a lifelong atheist betraying the cause and becoming a Catholic,
please to rise for Fire Nation National Anthem. Fire, Lord, my flame.
In this video, we're going to cover lifelong atheist turned Catholic Jennifer Fulwiler. She's a former radio host turned comedian, a best-selling author, and a mother of 6. I can't cover this almost hour-long lecture on my phone, so we're going to watch a 10-minute segment, and it should be a barrel of laughs, unless, of course, this was from before she became a comedian.
So I didn't have any readers, and so I decided to recruit readers, and I knew just where I'd go. There was a website called The Raving Atheist, very aptly named. I cannot even hint at some of the things that this man would say about Christians. The hatred that he had for people of the faith was palpable. And I was aware of the site because he was the biggest atheist blogger at the time.
I meant to start recording that a few seconds earlier, but what she was saying is that she was an atheist blogger, and nobody was reading her shit, and she went over to this other dude's channel to poach some readers for her blog, or vlog, whatever.
But I noticed that he had this following of Christians who did an excellent job of responding to even his most hateful posts, and the other people in the comments. I mean, these Christians they did an amazing job of addressing atheist arguments. And one thing is they did it with charity and with peace. And I thought, man, if someone had said that to me, you can't even imagine what I would have responded with. And I saw these Christians, and there was this sense of, man, I want what they have, like that. I mean, that's superhuman, the way that they're able to deal with these people.
Where to begin with all of that? I get a lot of Christian love in my comments. You'll burn in hell. I'll pray for you, fool. Read the Bible. It says you believe in God, Jesus. But I've never heard a single reason to change my mind. If somehow that's a reason for Jen, I'll have to question her ability to reason.
But most importantly, at the time anyway, was that they could demolish atheist arguments.
I just know it's going to be the dumbest reasons I've ever heard. Pascal's wager. I'd rather die and be wrong than not believe and be right. Or one of my personal favorites.
Please don't be mad at me, I'm sorry.
Romans 1:20, for God's invisible works are clearly seen. I call it, just look at the flowers, Jennifer.
Just look at the flowers.
I recruited, I think, 6 people to come answer questions on my blog. I would find out later 5 of them were Catholic, these people that I had specifically identified as being able to demolish atheist arguments. And there were other people on there, but the ones that I picked out were all Catholic. So I had these Catholics reading my blog, and at the time I'm not sure if I even understood that they were Catholic. And so I started talking about these problems that I was having with Scripture. And so they told me a very interesting theory. They said, what if when God inspired the writers of the Bible, fallible people who make mistakes, but he inspires them to convey infallible truth. They said, what if he didn't stop doing that after the Bible was written? What if he kept doing that in a church that he founded with his own authority? And what if it is still around to this day? And I thought, that is a crazy question, isn't it? And I thought, that sounds really right. And then they told me they were talking about the Catholic Church, and I was like, oh, no, but, oh, come on, that is just ridiculous. Like, and Joe, the Southern Baptist, was like, oh, this is, you need to get away from the internet, because these people they're talking crazy talk.
I could swear later in the video she calls her husband Joe a Presbyterian.
But I had nowhere else to turn, because I had pursued every other avenue.
I haven't edited out a single second of this video, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, the atheist vlogger had no choice but to become a Catholic because she pursued other avenues and there was nowhere else to turn. I appreciate Jennifer's honesty. She reminds me of a couple high school cheerleaders I knew, and she didn't join the squad for the school spirit. It's all about the competition.
Battle is the great redeemer, the fiery crucible in which the only true heroes are forged, regardless of what kind of parasitic scum they were going in.
And so I just started reading, and Joe started reading. And as happens, I mean, those of you who are converts and reverts,
look around you. Every necromonger in this hall is a convert.
There'll be no conversion.
I know this is going to resonate with you. You start to look into it, and you're like, well, why didn't someone tell me that there was all this great stuff here? I mean, CNN doesn't talk about this when they talk about the Catholic Church. I mean, we found this incredible moral code, and it was perfectly internally consistent. It didn't contradict itself, and it was full of this wisdom that was totally counterintuitive and yet so right.
Hey, Roger, what do you call it the middle of a song?
Dude, I don't know.
She is so oblivious. She thinks that from the day St. Peter said, upon this rock I'm going to build me church. They've been hitting all these angelic high notes, home run after home run. When are we going to get to the part where she talks about how she risked her life not using birth control and had 6 pups?
And the particular issue that really convinced us was the one of the issue of abortion and contraception. Joe and I both considered ourselves pro-choice, and we thought contraception was like air and water. I mean, it's like a needed thing that humans have to have. And when we realized...
I recorded this video a couple days ago, and I had no idea the next words out of her mouth were going to be about the abortion pregnancy thing. There's still 10 minutes left in the source video, and I honestly didn't know if we were going to get to it.
That the church was right on that issue. We thought, I don't think this comes from people. I don't think we give people enough credit to come up with this and keep it going.
Seriously, you and Joe can't conceive any reason that a bunch of ancient goat herders came up with an excuse for why they didn't have to pull out. Then Judah said to Onan, boy, you better go in there and bang your dead brother's wife and fulfill your duty. But Onan knew that the child would not be his. So whenever he tapped that ass, he'd pull out and squirt on the floor. And what he did was wicked in Jesus' sight. And so Jesus put him to death also. If you haven't read Genesis 38 and all of Genesis, you've got to go check it out. Because in verse 11... it's like a Dr. Evil plan, I swear.
Especially this teaching that every Christian denomination agreed on these teachings.
I have a plan.
About abortion and contraception up until the 1930s. And then as public opinion shifted, all the other churches shifted, except for the Catholic Church.
It's called blackmail.
So I started writing on my blog, like, guys, this is amazing. This teaching is so beautiful. Theology of the body. You need to listen to Dr. Janet Smith and read Christopher West.
Yeah, that or something really insane and off the rails, like read the Bible, Numbers 5:11-29, on how to cause a magical abortion on an unfaithful wife. 100% guaranteed.
And God was up there like, ha, ha, ha. Watch what I'm about to do. So I was pregnant with my second child.
I says, Super Collider, I just met her.
I got a deep vein thrombosis, a life-threatening blood clot, and I was diagnosed with a blood clotting disorder that is exacerbated by pregnancy. And I was told by my doctors, you need to use like 10 different forms of contraception.
You can say there's no such thing as Santa.
DVT suck, and they kill not pregnant people too. but I'm just not sure any doctors, plural, actually gave this bad advice. Jennifer, I'm sorry that you suffered a life-threatening blood clot, but shit happens. But I just can't fathom doctors telling you that you can't have any more babies because of one.
And at the time, I wasn't even Catholic, and I thought, so now I'm the religious nut in the office. I mean, like a couple years ago, I was the atheist, and like now I'm the religious fundamentalist. And it really put me in this difficult situation.
Yeah, no shit. It's like you change your views like you change your underwear, hopefully once a week at least.
And I hadn't told many people about our journey, but I told a few people. And their response was to say, like, well, just skip that one teaching, just be Catholic, but, don't follow that one, like, because that's crazy. I mean, nobody really, nobody does that in this day and age. And I'm as tempted as anyone to take the easy way out.
I'm confused. Like, what do you want, a cookie? The Congressional Medal of Honor? Like, what, you're a proper Catholic because you spit out a half a dozen children? No offense, but nobody really cares.
But what Joe and I realized is that when you're asking a question of the Catholic Church, when you have a problem, there's really only one question to ask. And that is this church guided by God in its teachings or not?
Every time Jen says her husband's name, I can taste the vomit in the back of her throat. Joe is like a Southern Protestant or something, and she was an atheist, and they settled on Catholicism, and he's still a wimp.
Because if it's not, then throw it all out. There's no need to listen to anything it says, including its claim that it chose the correct books for the canon of the Bible. But if it is, then to say that you know better than the church is to say that you know better than God.
Remember when people used to lie and say their faith was based on a personal relationship with Jesus? I had a bunch of Catholic friends when I was a kid, and their moms would always threaten to hit them on the head with a wooden spoon.
And I'm pretty arrogant, but I wasn't ready to go there. So we said, all right, we are going to trust God on this, and we are going to be Catholic all the way. We're not going to pick and choose. We are going to do this right.
You can do it all night long.
And so we decided to become Catholic.
To me, this all just seems like a bunch of excuses to constantly be pregnant and not have very much sex. And yeah, like, who wants to wear a raincoat when they're taking a shower?
Because what we had seen was that this church was more reasonable than atheism. At the time, I still thought that atheism was a somewhat reasonable view. I didn't think it was entirely crazy. But here, I had found a worldview and a philosophy that was more reasonable than atheism.
Where's all the, I love Jesus, he's my Lord and Savior, and he died on the cross for my sins. He's the Alpha and Omega, and he's coming back any second now, and the dead Christians will rise up out of the graves and zombie walk with him off to Earth 2, a.k.a. Bob.
Bob?
And it is the only one I had ever encountered, and to this day I've ever encountered, that I found more reasonable.
It desecrates the house of God!
We had gotten the answers to that question of by what authority. This was the authority that both Joe and I, and Joe in his life as a Protestant, and I in my conversion had been asking, like, how do you know that that's how the scriptures are supposed to be interpreted? That question was answered. It also answered the question of literacy, that question I'd had of, so what if you live in 1408 and you don't have the $1,000 for a Bible and you can't even read and you work 14 hours in the field? The Mass and the sacraments and the deposit of faith through the church, that answered all those questions about how those people can come to know God too.
Everything I think and everything I do is wrong. It all boiled down to one inevitable conclusion. I was just totally clueless.
I thought that would be a good place to end this. The comedian picks and chooses her worldviews like she shops for a home in some suburban cul-de-sac. They have great public schools out here. But then she goes on to drop these fucking insane pearls of wisdom.
And interestingly, the scandals were going on at the time. And some people said, you know, well, you've heard about all these things that are happening in the Catholic Church. Doesn't that concern you? And of course it did. It was terrible news that, you know, grieved us, and as it grieved all of you, I'm sure. But in terms of deciding, you know, whether or not this church was God's true church, in an odd way, it made the case more compelling.
I'm sorry, but that's so fucked up that I can't get into it in this video. There's no way possible.